All right, welcome to episode 2 of Wicked Connected. We're gonna start off today with what was the coolest networking thing you did last week. So I don't know who should kick it off.
I think Taylor should. I did it last week.
Ooh,
So.
okay.
That's fair.
Oh, you're out
I
of the
feel
bus.
great
there.
about that. Yes. Last week I went to a couple. One actually with Steven, which was so much fun, a wine event. It's always fun to be a winemaker for a day. But one that really resonated with me professionally, but also just, what I find very interesting is I'm a member at Crew, so Women in Commercial Real Estate, and we actually were able to go on site in Dorchester to a location that was previously a hotel. Unfortunately, due to COVID, they didn't make it through. And so now it's being rehabilitated to affordable housing, 90 plus units for elderly that are actually coming out of homelessness. So, homelessness is really a big issue right now in Massachusetts. I mean, it is in a lot of areas, but there's an ongoing list of individuals that are either just out of homelessness or just borderline close enough to it. So it was really cool to hear the construction company and the development company talk about how they won this, talking to the neighborhood and getting their approval, the type of retrofits that they're doing to the building. And so we usually have to wear a hard hat. We didn't have to this time, but being able to do the full tour. I lived in Quincy for a little while, so I knew the area well, which was just nice to be back and see the area. But what they're being able to provide. And then at the same time, not only was it incredibly informational, I was able to talk with the leaders who are walking us through their development. And, with me working within real estate with tax incentives, it was, of course, great alignment and conversation, but with affordable housing overall, it being such a big push in Massachusetts and a special projects area that I focus in, it was awesome. And also seeing familiar faces from Crew and meeting new, faces, it was great. And those are some of my favorite type of events, are either very specific panelists or tours, because it gives you ideas. Not only is it giving you professional ideas, but you're able to have very specific talking points too with individuals, and it has your mind thinking. So that was mine. It was a really good one. What about you, Amelia?
Yeah.
I like to volunteer someone else. That's
Perfect.
I like this idea. This is fun.
Yes. Pass it around.
So my favorite event last week, I was actually again with Steven at our FEI event. So it was AI Unplugged. It was a fireside chat. We had a couple really, really great panelists. I personally, like Taylor said, I really love events when there's some sort of educational panel, because I think it's just a good educational thing that then it's a good talking point when you're going to your next networking event and just keeping you up to date on what's going on. What I found super interesting, though, is we did a similar event end of last year, and the tone of the room had totally switched with AI. So last year, it was like people couldn't stop raising their hands. Like, what about this? What about this? There was a lot of real excitement about AI. And the questions this time around were quite different. They were more of, how are they going to take our jobs? Like, what do we have to worry about with AI? So in just 12 months, to me, AI it's just developing so quickly. I think a lot of people don't know what we don't know. And it was at first this really exciting thing. And now we're seeing how scary and powerful it can be, and the tone of it switching, which I think the long-term landscape, I'm excited to see kind of 12 months from now what the next round of conversation is going to be.
wow.
Yes.
I'm going to jump in, if you don't mind. I'm going to jump in right after because I'm going to build on that. So my event that I went to was actually on Saturday. There was an event up in this really beautiful house right on the ocean up in Gloucester during that crazy storm on Saturday. Well, it wasn't a crazy storm, but it was just like very stormy and ominous, huge waves and whatever. But it actually was an event. So I did my MBA at the University of Rochester. So it was an event. It was an alumni event for the University of Rochester, and specifically the guest who was there was the Dean of Innovation and Education, is what he was called. And what was really interesting was to hear. So a lot of academic institutions are talking about AI from the perspective of how do we stop students from cheating with AI. And so it was really refreshing to hear a totally different take, which was how do we train our students to use AI as a tool in their jobs and to really recognize. And so he was talking about some really cool stuff that they're doing. Basically every class has to have a unit on, every course has to have a unit on AI. They are training all their students, faculty, and staff in how to use AI tools. And then they had done, the coolest thing that they had done was they had created a virtual TA for some of their courses. So essentially you upload all the information about the course, and it would you could essentially, if you're a student, you could ask it questions. But what was even better was that then the professor got a summary of all the students' questions, and they could basically see all the questions that the students were like afraid to ask in class because they thought it was going to be look too stupid, and go, oh, people aren't understanding this topic, I'm going to talk about it more. So just really interesting stuff about how do we embrace the AI changes and so forth. So it's really interesting and a great event. I mean, I always find those university related events to be really nice because you've got something in common with folks. But it's also really interesting to see who you meet and connect with folks. So that was really fun. Really enjoyed it, and I guess I'll pass it over to Stephen.
Yeah, I guess this is dangerous having been with both Taylor and Amelia on the various events. But
yeah, I should have said, Stephen, I felt a little bit left out that I did not get to.
Next time it's with Jeff.
Don't worry, there will be plenty more winemaker for a day experiences. Events. So. But no, for me, I guess, yeah, it's tough because there are a bunch of great ones in different ways last week. So definitely like the winemaker for a day, literally one of my favorite experiences to do. And obviously I've done it a lot more than everybody else because I lead them, but every time it's different in a different way, like different realizations, that sort of thing. And it's always fun, of course, for me to have the CPAs in the room, which I think are also interesting for all of us in different ways too. So that was and is always a great one. I think there's going to be some pictures and stuff coming out on that shortly on LinkedIn, so stay posted. But then as far as the AI one, I 100% agree. For that was such an interesting topic. For me also was, I found it fascinating that it was so far into it that they started talking about the opportunities versus all the risks, right? I think as you said, Amelia, to me it's crazy. And one of the speakers who was a teacher or educator, or moderator, I guess in her case, but what she said is, I did this whole lesson plan for my coursework, and just as a trial. And she's like, do I feel bad? Do I not? And from my perspective, right, I just go back to work smarter, not harder type of thing, and take that as the baseline and build on it, right? I was asked at my previous employer, pull together a strategic growth plan. I've never done that for a company, right? And so I'm like, but I'll do it. Let's go for it. And in 30 minutes, ChatGPT had something that was pretty good for bones. And then obviously using my background, asking questions of the owner, et cetera, it's getting that to, okay, this is an outline that makes more sense for the business. But that outline would have otherwise taken me 8 hours or something. Now that's literally done like that. A little bit of refinement with updating questions, those sort of things. And so now ultimately it's more efficient, still requires a human brain and intervention, that sort of thing, to get it to the next level. But I saved 8 hours. So I think about how I use it. I use it in the day-to-day on the wine business, et cetera. And then the other interesting one that I'd mentioned in the last podcast was the basically the one related to the Good Shepherd. And so that was the donor appreciation event. That was really awesome. So the folks who had hosted it, they were actually, so the guy was he's a former architect for several decades, and he's also a very interesting sculptor / artist / just really interesting innovator. And so there were a lot of different things. Basically, the house was a mini museum, and so really, really cool. And I guess for future, they're very happy to show it off, that sort of thing. So if anybody's interested, it's pretty fascinating. I took a ton of photos and videos. So I really had a pretty action-packed, interesting week last week.
Last night, a whole week in one night.
Last night, I think, was one of the first times I did not have a networking event. Wow. So that was actually good.
Break. You deserve the break.
Yeah,
I need a break.
I'm exposing myself. I don't have a networking event to go to. I'm not going to one this week.
Oh, wow.
But I decided I always go to them, and I have a week off, so I should actually enjoy it. And that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. I feel like on two notes when we're just talking about, I think it's good to have a break. I mean, there is such thing as too much networking, and it's great professionally, personally to go out there. And if something's intriguing, I mean, I'm sure we've all been there where we could have 4 to 5, either it's, a breakfast type of seminar, it's a luncheon, it's an after work cocktail or tour, panelist, whatever it might be. But, you're going to feel burnt out eventually. So I think being able to be rejuvenated and pick and choose, because you also have, your personal time too, that's really important. But one thing on the AI, I was actually just thinking, and all of you bring up very, about the education piece, Jeff, that's something I've always been interested on just because so far removed, but I've always thought now that this is so apparent, how is it being tracked? And then same thing, I was, with Amelia and Stephen, I was actually on a virtual luncheon today with a CPA leading another crew seminar, and they brought up, CPAs and accounting firms sometimes using it. How do they use ChatGPT and AI and all of that in a way that's functional? But it actually could be beneficial for networkers. I mean, maybe you're a new networker and you might not have maybe topics on mind on how what questions to ask that are comfortable, or get the conversation going, or maybe it's a specific topic for an event you're going to and you want to feel extra educated. I think actually ChatGPT would be a really good resource prior to an event or networking seminar to utilize.
Well, so it's interesting too. Like, one of the things that I think I've mentioned, my brother and I are working on starting a company, and one of the things that my brother is a coder, and one of the things he's already done is he took my book that I published last June. He took the book, he took the content of the book, and he has created a virtual Jeff. Basically, you can query it and say, what would Jeff say about, like, what do I do if I have a micromanager or whatever? And so one of the reasons we were so interested in this idea is, we were watching people, sales folks on calls, and they don't have the expertise that the technical folks have. And so imagine if you had a ChatGPT like system that was closed, that had was really drawing off just the information that you need as a business development professional or a sales professional, and you basically can query questions and say, oh, this person just asked me about this, what should I talk about, or whatever. But it's not pulling off of, I always call ChatGPT the collective stupidity of the internet. It's not just the collective stupidity of the internet, but a very specific sort of walled version of ChatGPT that is basically focusing on the things that you need to know in order to understand your company. And from a networking perspective and a sales perspective, I think there's huge opportunities to leverage that as a way of educating yourself. And becoming more knowledgeable while you're talking to people. Anyway, I could totally geek out about AI this whole episode, but I think what we wanted to talk about today was, how did you start networking? So I don't know. I feel like should I let Taylor and Amelia going to duke it out for?
I'm going to volunteer.
I'm not going to say no to that.
I'm going to volunteer Stephen this time.
All right. So Amelia,
Right.
I'll do the question. Amelia, you volunteer people for them.
I like this kind of vibe.
That's why we're on the top row.
Yes, we're in charge.
Splitting up roles and responsibilities.
That's what it's all about, teamwork.
Stephen, how did you start?
There you go.
Is he glitching again?
Oh, he's glitching again.
Yeah, it's actually, that is. So yeah, it's fine on my side.
I don't know.
And he starts talking. I guess
What about now?
It was going very well.
We were doing great, and now we're glitching. Oh well, it's okay.
I know, that's so strange.
All right, you're kind of back. Let's just go with it.
All right, can we try now?
Yeah, give it a try.
All right, we'll run with it. So it's a good question, I think. I think back in college, right? So my thing was, I was incredibly shy growing up. And the one thing that I said is that when I went to college, I was going to put myself out there, right? And doing things such as different networking groups, whether it be the accounting association or different clubs, all that sort of thing. So that was really kind of how I started it. Then I started a full-time job. I was still doing a eBay business basically at the same time. And so not necessarily a lot of time for extracurricular networking like I would have liked to, but I still did a fair bit of business development, just very, very light at that point in time. Fast forward, I went to a different company, traveling a lot internationally, so meeting a ton of people, but not necessarily intentional networking for that time. As I rejoined KPMG on the accounting advisory side, then it became much more critical. And so in that, again, I was also working a ton of hours, so did what I could to put myself out there. But then once I started at Monomoy, where it was really a 50-50 BD and execution type thing, that's where it was really, really like intense, much more intentional networking and joining groups such as, the private, staying really heavy into the Mass Society of CPAs, and really just a ton of other things that made sense as I kind of went on. One of them being the Mass Young Professionals Association, and then just a ton of others, FEI, Finance Executives International, you name it, there's just a ton of them. And really just continuing to evolve as to what makes sense. Now I find myself with the wine side of the house, spending a lot more time doing, for example, the chamber events. Like that's a much better fit for me, just based on the nature of the folks there, a lot of small businesses, businesses looking for corporate gifting, those sort of things. So just kind of evolved with time, I guess, as well.
Awesome.
Hopefully not too glitchy, but
yeah,
you're fine. Once you started talking, you were fine.
Yeah. Maybe he was pretending to glitch. I don't know. Well, so I'll take it. Since we were going on the diagonals last time, so I'll go next. But for me, it's really interesting. I started out in corporate jobs. Well, actually, I started out my career. I was actually a high school math and physics teacher. That was my first job, and you do not do a lot of networking when you are a high school math and physics teacher. And then I went to business school, and I went off to be a corporate marketer. And in a corporate world, you don't have to network that much. And so I really didn't come to networking until probably when I left my corporate job about a year ago. And it was something my brother said to me maybe a year and a half ago. He said to me, "Hey, Jeff, all those people that you're worried about ignoring you on LinkedIn?" He said, "They're all ignoring you right now." And I was like, yeah, that's true. So it's taken me a while, but I started reaching out to people, going to events, connecting with people and so forth. And now I have this thing where at least once a month, I need to have a call with somebody that I met on LinkedIn that I have no reason to even know. And I absolutely do that. I've actually made friends this way. I have people that I talk to every month that were like some random person that I connected with. And so I love it. It's so much fun to do it, but I never did it when I was younger, and I could have been doing it for years and years. I can't imagine what my
LinkedIn
connections would have looked like if I had been doing this for years. I think my LinkedIn connections doubled in the last year. So, it's
getting popular.
It's super, but for me, it's fun. And I think actually the other piece of advice that I keep hearing from various sources is you don't want to start networking with people when you need something from them.
Yeah.
It's much better to network with people when you're just like, hey, I noticed you talk about the same things that I talk about, or you meet somebody at an event, like the way Steven and I met or whatever, and you end up having coffee and you start a podcast. I mean, it happens all the time, right? So
yeah, you never know if you're going to network it.
I don't know.
Amelia, just super quick. It's funny you said that, Jeff. It's funny you said that because so many of those things tie into exactly that same theme, right? Like if you are, looking for a job, it's always better if you have a job as you're looking for the next one, right? If you are trying to raise funds, it's always good to do that, not when you actually are desperate for the cash, but when you're in a good situation, right? So there's just so many different things where that kind of similar, it just has long, it rolls through. I had literally the same exact conversation with somebody today who's I would say a mentee of mine, who's also from West New England, my alma mater, and we talked about exactly that topic. So very on point.
Yeah.
And yes, Amelia, I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had been to networking events prior to Insperity. My role prior to Insperity, I would go to trade shows, but I did not know what networking was, and I was like a fish out of water. My boss would be like, "Go talk to this person. Go talk to this person." I'm like, "What? No, that's scary. I don't want to do that. Can I just sit at the booth here?" And then fast forward, I was at Insperity, and again, like I am a little bit more of an introvert, so the idea of networking was something that was super scary, and like I was like, this is just not my vibe. I don't think I want to do this. But which is funny now, sitting on a podcast talking about networking. But it was not. It was one of my managers at Insperity. He had said, he goes, I never made Trip until I started networking. Build your network. It's the most important thing you can do for your business. And I was like, okay. And I'm going to give a shout out to Alina Ritter here because from Insperity. She'll probably be on this podcast at one point or another. And if you don't know her, I'm shocked because she's like the most famous networker in Boston. I swear to God. But she really took me under her wing when I started Insperity. She brought me to my first event, and I kind of learned the ropes from her of just, and it was an easy one. We went to trade. It was vendor something in Kendall Square, and it's all these biotech different vendors, and we would just go. It was super quick. You would go to this event, you would go to each table, give your little speech, ask them a couple questions, and from there, I was like, oh, this isn't so scary. Then I got introduced to a couple virtual ones. My first event I ever went to by myself was a chamber event. I think those are a great place to start. And I think a big reason for it is, you have to go to the right one. But I think all of them that I've been to in this area, like they're all super welcoming. And a lot of these people that like that's their social time. And growing from there, the more I did it, I met a couple other people, and they said, hey, like, I know you're networking for Insperity, but really, like, this is for you. Like, nobody else, like, how many times do you go to an event, do you see a woman of your age networking like you are? Like, in 10 years, you're going to be looking back, thanking yourself for it. And I mean, I told my story last week about getting a new opportunity with Supporting Strategies, and it was all through networking. I love Insperity. I loved Insperity. I wasn't even thinking about leaving. And I got an opportunity that I couldn't refuse. And it was all just through the reputation I built through networking and the relationships I built through networking. So it's never too late to start. And it's not as scary as it seems, especially for those introverted people out there. Especially like to me, I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't think I need more friends, but then, you meet people and you're like, wow, we have so much in common. Like, literally one of my best friends, I think I hang out with her more than anyone else. I met through networking at FEI and, just chatting, the more we got to know each other, the more we're like, how have we like gone 30 years without being friends? This is crazy.
True.
And from there, I'm just excited to get into my new role at Supporting Strategies and kind of revisit networking groups and things that I haven't, that didn't necessarily generate a lot of good business for me at Insperity. I think it was a little bit of there's a lot of overlap, but there's going to be a lot more opportunity for me out there. So it's exciting, like kind of starting new in the sense that I'm still me. I still have my brand, but I'm doing it and trying to generate business and build new relationships for a different product and a different set of services. So kind of going back through my network and knowing what I know now, I'm really excited because I've made my mistakes. I've figured it out and I've learned kind of what events to go to, what people to avoid, like how to ask proper questions, and really getting myself out there in a way where I've built a great network and I'm excited to keep building on it.
Absolutely.
Well, I think too, Amelia, with what you're saying, I resonated with a lot of it, but I think people who enjoy networking or serial networkers, it's it's very entrepreneurial, right? It's like you starting your new job, you're excited to go through like, how else can I make an impact or, connect someone through this way? So I completely understand that reasoning. And I think to your point and what, your mentor mentioned to you, like, this is for you. I think that's, I mean, how it always is. Of course, there's, purpose and meaning behind it to a degree, but you mentioned your personal brand. That's what it is. That's life, to be honest, whether it's the
Yeah.
Valvoline that I go to get my oil changed, or it's, a CPA event or Chamber of Commerce event, whatever it might be, like it's Taylor that I'm showing up to. And I'll talk about my story in a second, but I think the biggest thing with no matter what you are in life, my background is sales. So I'm saying sales specifically, but someone told me, an old mentor of mine, you can sell anything in life, right? You sell wanting to be a friend, selling a product, selling a service, selling, why you should do that, whatever it might be. But you're not trying to actually sell something, right? You're giving an opportunity. You're showcasing what the opportunity is, and by bringing valid information to give the person enough to make a decision on their own. That's the same thing with connecting with someone. Who am I talking to? Do I like that person? Are they respectful? Are they interesting to talk to? It's very similar. So that was my 2 cents on your part. But
Oh, I love it.
talk a little bit about where I started. I actually started in college. So I was a communications major, business management, dual major, business management, dual major as well. And so I worked with several organizations, a lot of nonprofits. One actually was a wine business, Stephen, and I handled their events. So it was putting together events and, doing a lot of, wine tastings. Then I worked for, the events committee for the YMCA, Big Brothers Big Sisters, all of this stuff. So it got me really comfortable with talking with a purpose. And I think it being an internship that I very much always prized myself professionally, but also I was desperate to soak up information and knowledge. And what did you do after school? Who are your contacts? How did you get where you are? Like, I just wanted to know. And so we very much talked about why I was there for, but it was more so me just being genuinely curious about a person. And that really brought to my job after college. I was in sales. And so client facing, right? I have to be very comfortable very quickly with meeting new people in person of all ages, comparative to myself, all backgrounds, professionally speaking. And so it's something you have to get comfortable with. But I brought those tactics with me. I will never forget someone who is still in my professional network today was like, yeah, I said I'd meet with you because you act like you knew me for years, which you didn't. And so, but that was great because that was really good feedback. And I've gotten critical feedback too, but I think it's just being yourself and then the rest can follow. But from there, I think my first actual networking experience that was larger was I actually worked for a VC. And so it was for a ton of startup companies in the marketing realm. They're trying to grow in the US. And so I went to Media Week in New York, and it's for a couple of days, and it's so many different avenues, so many different people. I mean, there was like 5,000 people, and I haven't been in a room with 5,000 people ever. So that was my first time. I was alone, and at the same time, I needed to make connections. So I remember the first day feeling, I did my research, where I should kind of go to, what sessions to go to. And I think that's imperative, right? Like, again, I'm someone who I need information that helps with talking points, that helps me just feel more confident. But the first day I made a mistake because I kept trying to sell what these companies that I was going to be. I led the conversation with that. I'm like, why am I not being Taylor right now? So the next day I looked myself in the mirror. I was like, let's go back to basics here. And I started talking with people, just started talking. Where are you from? What got you here? This food, whatever is going on. And then naturally things fell into place. So,
right.
I think that was a really big thing. And then from there, now it's, going to different networking events. And the other piece that Jeff, you mentioned, you wanting to reach out to someone once a month who, there's really no connection. It's just like people are meant, even if you're an introvert, an extrovert, I truly believe that people need human connection. And so finding similarities, I mean, one of my best friends, Amelia, I met out of school at my first job. And I'm like, I can't this life without you. I don't know. I was in her wedding this past summer. So you never know. And that's a great aspect. But at the same time, today I had a conversation with someone and I made a deal work due to what I could bring to the table from what my company provides. That's awesome. That's not going to always happen, but that could also happen.
Well, I think, it's a really important point is you don't sell by going from cold to sale. You sell by creating a connection, creating trust, and then creating an opportunity, like you said, for sale. And it's really hard. It's particularly hard when you're sort of like, I really need business right now, right? Like, how do you do that? But that said, it is as expected. 30 minutes has flown by. So maybe we should do a quick round of of
The delayed laugh.
delayed. Yeah, Steven's on a delay. I don't know. We're gonna have to figure this out for the future, but it all works. But maybe just do a quick round. Like, what's on your docket this week for networking? And that was awesome to hear everybody's stories. I don't know.
Jeff.
Am I first this time?
Yeah, I'm first. You this time.
It's funny. I don't have any events, although I may go. There's a like a startup kind of thing in Cambridge on Thursdays that apparently.
Cafe.
Hey, I may go to that this week. But the other thing is, I am having coffee with someone tomorrow morning. I'm trying to even remember. Oh, yeah. So this was somebody I'm having coffee with who is a connection of somebody I met at one of those coffee things that happen at the Charles River Chamber of Commerce. So like, I love that when I get a connection through a connection. And
I have the same thing tomorrow. That is so funny. Coffee in the morning.
Are we meeting for coffee?
You guys have different names.
No, but it was funny because I had a Zoom call with this person last week, and turns out she's writing a book, and so I'm like, oh, I just published a book, and so I was telling her all about it, and so we ran out of time in the half an hour we had, and so we were like, oh, let's just meet up for coffee. So that's probably my big networking thing for this week. But I will pass it over to Steven.
Cool. Yeah, I actually had to think about this because I know I have a bunch of things, but yeah. So today there's a couple of things. I took notes because I was really trying to rack my brain. So today there is an event in Wellesley, which is a chamber event. Jeff, I'm surprised you're not going. That should be a fun one. Yeah, lots of What's that?
I probably should.
I shouldn't have called you out. No, you're busy. I know that's why you're not going, of course. But there's a chamber event in Wellesley tonight, and then after that, there's a private directors associate. Well, concurrent to that, but I'll be going a little bit later, is the Private Directors Association event at the PwC in the Seaport. And then tomorrow there's an event for Boston young professionals. And so I will be hosting a wine tasting for complimentary. So for the wine drinkers of the Boston young professionals, that should be fun. And then Thursday is a little bit more to come in the future, but it will be my first day, or I guess first day kind of, starting as the interim CFO for a company. So just kind of going through talking about things there. I know, Taylor, you know a little bit more about the company. I guess, Amelia, you do too. But more to come as that solidifies.
I don't know.
Sorry?
I said I was wondering if that was the company, but I didn't want to just.
Yeah, so that should be fun. I'm heading down to Connecticut for that. And then I know I have a couple of other things. What I will just put a quick plug out there for is on October 20th, and I think that I let the three of you know about that. On October 20th, for those in the Newton area, there's an event so it's basically the Patty's Road Race, and so that's for Athletes Unlimited. So really cool, not-for-profit. So good family type event. Lots of if you want to run, jog, walk, you can do all of the above. And then definitely just a great organization with lots of vendors, booths, and I will be setting up a booth as well for the wine side of the house. So hope to see some of you there.
Awesome.
Taylor.
Nice. Yes, so very similarly to Jeff, have a coffee with someone who I actually got introduced. They're 3 times removed now. Met someone at a BOMA event. She was giving a speech because she won an award. I said, what a great job she did. And now, doing work with someone. So that's always great to see. And then actually no other events. I've had a couple of virtual events this week. I'm always a opponent of, going in person. But there's been actually some really good virtual ones this week. I do have a group outing internally tomorrow, so that's going to be nice. It's just as important to, build your network internally as well. But I'll also put in a plug, October 5th, Walking for Strides. It's a breast cancer walk. My company will be hosting it. It's not hosting it. I'm so sorry. We will be having a team there, 9 to 10 a.m. But there's plenty of individuals that are walking, teams that are walking. But that's a really good thing to consider as well.
Awesome.
Well, I already exposed myself at the beginning of the call where I'm not doing any networking this week. But I am excited because just already reaching out to, or actually people have reached out to me, which is kind of crazy. And I think that's a story for another day about networking, about how fast word travels in the networking sphere. That being said, I've had already people reach out on LinkedIn. Hey, I heard you left Insperity, and we already have coffee set up for the next few weeks. And I keep saying, all right, October 1st, I'll send you the calendar. But other than that, I'm enjoying my time. I'm actually headed out Thursday night to Scottsdale for a friend's birthday for a long weekend, and thought that was a great way to end my little vacation and start my new transition.
Awesome.
Very nice.
Awesome. We'll see you all next week.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yeah, enjoy your coffees. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.